Welcome back, guys, to the 5th installment of my top 10 players of 2017. Number 6 is going to be NRG's GarrettG, my second NRG player that makes the list. Of course, Jacob was the other one at number 8. And the, I believe, 4th North American player that's made the list. So we're getting quite stacked on NA. EU, am I biased to EU? Maybe not after all. But I'm going to very quickly mention the results that are unique to GarrettG compared to his teammate Jacob, who I've already made a video on. And if you want to see every other result that Garrett had in detail listed out, go check out the video I did on Jacob, because I'm not going to repeat those results. But they did play RLCS Season 3 LAN and the X Games, DreamHack Atlanta, RLCS Season 4 playoffs, and Gnarly and the RLCS Season 4 LAN together. So if you want to see how Garrett did in those tournaments more specifically, go check out my Jacob video. The one tournament that Garrett did play by himself, well not entirely by himself, he was playing with Dapper, was the Universal Open. And I say by himself in the sense that he didn't play with Jacob or Fireburner, his teammates. And they had a relatively okay tournament. They didn't run into that much tough competition, except versus Mocket GFE and Sizzle Your Cob, where they were able to take down Mocket, that was Pashy and Fairy Peak, 2-1 in a best of 3. Then they lost to GFE, that is K-Dop and Violent Panda, the eventual winners of the tournament, 2-0. And then they lost in the 5th place match against Sizzle Your Cob, with which is Jacob and Sizz. They lost that one 2-1, and Jacob and Sizz went on to come 3rd place. So Jacob, Garrett's teammate, did better than Garrett in the Universal Open. He had a higher placing in that tournament, but I've decided to put Garrett a couple of places higher than him in my top 10, and hopefully I can explain why. So before I do that, I'll just very quickly mention a couple of other bits of information that I have been including in my other top 10 videos. And the first piece of information I want to tell you guys is that Garrett got around about $30,888 of prize money from all major tournaments in 2017. And out of the players that make my list, that puts him 7th place. So again, I've put him a little bit higher than his prize money placing as well. And in terms of win-loss, he has gone dead even, 10 wins, 10 losses in series versus other teams that were considered to be top tier throughout 2017. So he's bang on even in that regard, and that puts him at 8th place out of the players that made my top 10 for 2017. So as you can see, he's not made top 6 in any of the categories that I've come up with myself to help me figure out who my top 10 players are. But there are hopefully still good reasons why I've decided to put Garrett in the top 6 and ahead of players like Torment, Gimmick, Fairy Peak and Jacob. And I'll do a little bit of head-to-head comparison with those guys, starting off first of all with Jacob, because they are teammates. They did, of course, play the majority of 2017 in the same team together. But before I do that, I'll just very quickly recap on the tournament finishings for Garrett, just so you guys can see a quick breakdown, just in case you don't want to go and look at the detailed results in the other video that I made for Jacob at number 8. So those are 1st place at RLCS Season 3 Online. Of course, NRG were the best team in North America at that time, and they finished 1st pretty handily. They then finished 3rd place at the RLCS Season 3 LAN, which was considered to be a pretty good result at that tournament. They also almost made winners finals, which could have been a completely different story if they did, as they only lost 4-3 to Mocket in winners final. Sorry, I meant they almost made grand finals. They lost winners finals 4-3. So that's a really, pretty solid result. And then at X Games, they were able to win the entire tournament. So that's probably the best result that we had seen for the NA region since winning Season 1 LAN with IBP. It went a bit downhill since then. Their year didn't continue. I think after they got that LAN victory, they might have, as a team, stepped off the gas a little bit. I'm not sure if that's the only reason. Maybe you could also put it down to pressure, because up until that point they were never tournament favorites in any tournament, and now suddenly they've won the X Games, so people have huge expectations for them going into DreamHack Atlanta, where they fell to the Muffin Men, the eventual winners, and finished 5th place. Their tournament was going great up until that point. It is worth mentioning. They were doing fantastically well. in DreamHack Atlanta, just beating everybody, including a 3-0 win over Mocket in the second group stage, which was Bashi, Fairy Pecan, Freaky, the same Mocket that we see at the end of the year. But the quick 3-0 defeat to Muffin Men in the quarterfinals meant that they do finish 5th to 8th place in DreamHack Atlanta. Then, of course, I did mention the Universal Open, 5th place for Garrett. And just to round off the year, they had the 3rd place finish at RLCS Season 4 Online behind Cloud9 and Ghost, although I don't think they played Ghost in that playoffs, or else I would have expected them to maybe come out on top in that matchup, because Ghost beat G2, then lost to Cloud9, whereas NRG just lost to Cloud9 round 1 and then had to beat G2 to only come 3rd. And then, of course, they finished 3rd place in the Gnarly Invitational, which again is a fairly respectable result, given that by this point in the year they're no longer considered to be the best team in North America, and Cloud9 have really taken that away from them. And they finished, only behind PSG and Cloud9, which is not at all a bad result. But they, of course, they did lose twice to PSG at that tournament. It is worth mentioning. It's quite an interesting rivalry, because they've never played again since then. So PSG, they're sort of the NA Slayers. They have a winning record over Cloud9, a winning record over NRG, and I think it's only G2 that are able to give them a good game, and maybe be favourites against them. But that's the GarrettG summary. Sorry it's taken so long, but I do want to get every bit of detail in there. Head-to-head comparison with Jacob and Garrett. Why did I put Garrett above Jacob in my top 10? Well, partly because I think that Garrett, for a large portion, probably the largest portion of 2017, Garrett was considered the best player in North America. I think, just straight up, he was #1 player in North America for longer than anybody else. I mean, players like JNaps, Squishy have probably come and taken that mantle at certain stages throughout the year. Maybe Jacob at one point during online when they were playing really well as a team. But when in that early part of the year, where they did finish 1st in RLCS Season 3 Online, 3rd at RLCS Season 3 LAN, and then 1st at X Games, I think that Garrett was the main contributor to NRG, and he was the reason, really, that they were able to lock in those victories. Fireburner and Jacob, of course, previously struggling with other thirds, particularly with Sad Junior, but before that they did play with other thirds as well, and they weren't quite able to ever get it done. Until Garrett showed up, and of course Garrett had previously been the carry of Orbit alongside Turtle and Moses, and he was able to function very, very well straight away in the NRG lineup. They really did look pretty good, pretty early. Not in the off season, but as soon as the season started, we were like, yep, they're back. They're looking good, and that's why I do think Garrett deserves to be higher up in the leaderboard than his teammate Jacob, who had a fantastic year himself. Even outdid Garrett in the Universal Open, but I think Garrett's individual contribution to the team, just consistency, is probably the key word here. The consistency that this guy brings to the team, and the confidence that his teammates are able to play with, because he just doesn't miss. Like, Garrett is just such a monster. And even if I recall, Sizz at the analyst desk of RLCS Season 4, that's a tournament that NRG completely bombed. They eliminated 9th place, didn't even qualify for E-League because of that awful result. Sizz even mentioned that he probably put Garrett as #1 in NA at that point, ahead of Squishy, ahead of JNaps, ahead of all of his rivals. So I think that's worth mentioning. He's just this incredibly well-respected player among the NA pro scene, even pro scene worldwide. Everybody looks up to this guy. He's always been a very, very good LAN performer, and he was finally able to show some fruit for that labor in RLCS Season 3 Online and RLCS Season 3 LAN and the X Games. Those 3 results, Garrett was outstanding, and that's why I've decided to put him ahead of any of or ahead of Jacob. And with how this explanation has gone, I think it's pretty obvious to you guys that Fireburner's not going to make top 5 in my list, but it's probably worth mentioning right now, and I'll mention again at the end when I do my honorable mentions, that Fireburner I think would have been number 11, actually, right behind Gimmick. It was a real struggle to choose between those guys for number 10, 11, because I wish I could have just made a top 14, 15, because there's a lot of players that are going to be on my honorable mentions list, but I decided to just stick with top 10, or else you guys are going to just claim that I'm milking it. But really, it's just that hard to, it's so hard to separate these guys. Very, very close, all the way from, I think, 6th, maybe 6th or 7th place, all the way down to like 14th you could make an argument for just about anybody in that range to get in, just based on your own personal preference. But that's why I think Garrett is ahead of Jacob. You know, I think I put him just a bit ahead of Torment because, like I said, I think Garrett is the main contributor for his team success. And you know, that's maybe going to spoil it. Yes, Squishy will be ahead of Torment in my list, and Gimmick, but where will he be? I won't obviously spoil that just yet. I'm very interested to see where you guys are predicting players are going to pop up. I think Garrett is probably the one player that didn't get much acclaim in the comments of these videos. I've been reading all the comments and seeing who you guys are predicting is going to show up. A couple of you guys are bang on. Just going to say that right now. A couple of you guys are going to be like very, very happy with your predictions when you see my top 10 unfold completely. But Garrett was probably the one name in my top 6 that I saw the least. And there's some other names in there that I'm not so much surprised to see there. But I think a few of you guys who are making predictions, they're not understanding like what it is I'm doing here. Like this, I'll reiterate again, it's not top 10 players at this moment. It's my top 10 players of 2017, what they've been able to accomplish this year, and that's why I've got Garrett at number 6, ahead of some really tough competition, honestly, just because of how strong he started off 2017, and even being considered the best player in North America by his rivals right up until the end of 2017, and being, I think, the most consistent performer. Not so much a carry, but certainly the player with sort of the most, well, I'm trying to think of the other words for consistency here, but yeah, he's the player that NRG really just looked to always show up no matter what, and they could always rely on him to do his job. And that's why they picked him up to replace Sad Jr. after another RLCS, I think it was season 2, not going quite as well as they wanted to. But that's going to be it for now, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully that was informative to some of you. I'll be back tomorrow for my number 5, and very much looking forward to seeing who you guys are predicting for my top 5 and what order. I'll be looking in the comments to see. But until then, have a good day. Thank you very much for watching, and see you later. I almost said good night, but well, good night, good morning, whatever time it is where you are. I'll see you next time.